Sai, Atul, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. And again, as we were sort of discussing in the green room, right? Congratulations on the new venture. Very much appreciate it. Atul, why don't we take a quick second, and maybe Sai after, just kind of giving a quick, kind of introduction. How did you, kind of like, how did you get into really being inspired to work on this venture?
Absolutely. Hey, that's a great question as well. So a quick start on like where we were, before we entered into like the whole entrepreneurial space, right? So Sriharsha was working at a startup. I was working at Meta, like biggest of big tech, so two opposites of the spectrum there. And Sai, like, and I are actually good friends from high school. So one day he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, the YC application deadline, it just passed, but would you like to give it a shot? Like, would you like to apply?" Within like 15 seconds of him sending that message, I was like, "Yes, let's do it." Like no thought process at all. And then we applied, we got into YC, and then yeah, the journey really kicked off there. We started off in like the customer success space, and then we very happily stumbled into sales tech, and we found a very nice home for ourselves here. Lots of great support in this space.
That's awesome. And Sai, if you think about the problem that you're solving, and by the way, before you get into that, I think that's one of the things, the fact that you two have been friends for a long time probably is a really great attribute in my experience as a serial founder over the years. Like, you basically like get married for 10 years, right? And so the fact that you two are friends and your ability to like work through things and so on and so forth. I think if I was an investor and I was looking at your YC application, that definitely is something that kind of stands out. So I just wanted to mention that for the founders out there who are watching this episode. Look for co-founders who will go through the mud with you, right? Who will work through those challenges and where you can really have a true relationship for a long period of time. But anyway, Sai, if you talk about the pain point that you're focused on, how would you sort of frame that?
Yeah, 100%. Jorge, first of all, thank you so much for bringing us on here. Really happy to be here. Yeah, so, this problem we're solving, I think it really comes down to applying the things that you're learning, right? Like, so if you think about how salespeople learn today, really the way it's done is, you get hired and you have this onboarding period where usually the company will hire like a sales trainer to, come in, give you some tips and tricks and like teach you kind of the whole sales methodology, right? And then 2 weeks later, they just kind of throw you into the fire and then expect you to perform. And then 2 months after that, if you're not hitting quota, you're done. Right. And so that's how the process today works. And I think what we identified was leading to a lot of attrition, in most companies we're talking to, was that there's just no way for salespeople to practice in a safe environment where they're not burning leads or hurting their quota. Right. And so that's how we came up with the idea for Hyperbound. And essentially, we're finally letting sales reps practice and, actually hone their skills in a way that allows them to just, get up to speed without worrying about, someone looking over their shoulder or without worrying about their job or hitting quota, right out of the gate. So yeah, that's where we are.
Awesome. Well, that really resonates with me pretty deeply. And there's a couple reasons why. The first reason is when I started to kind of learn sales in a more formal environment, sure, I sold like replacement plans for skateboards when I was working at Sports Authority back in undergrad. But I didn't really consider that, direct selling, right? It was retail selling, and I was more of maybe a sort of administrator, right, of that retail sale. But when I got to college and I started to do this door-to-door sales stuff that I talk about quite often, what I learned was our initial training, and this is kind of going to resonate, I think, with y'all. When we first started, right, they would send us to these like homes that were, I should say, how do I say this? They would send us to homes that didn't have as much purchasing power, right, to actually train. So I'd knock on those doors, and they didn't tell us this until much later in terms of the strategy, but that's how I would practice. So I'd knock on these doors. A lot of folks didn't have the purchasing power, but I got to actually test my sales pitch, right? My, what we called my approach, and all, basically a 20-minute sales cycle, right? Potential sales cycle, but certainly a sales motion. And so when you talk about kind of like the ability to test particularly the top of the funnel cold calling and these sort of things, super, super valuable, because the fact of the matter is, especially when you're onboarding new reps, right, they're not gonna be that great pretty early. And I would also argue that it's not just for those early reps, right, who are just getting on board, but also being able to continue to practice. The top salespeople in the world are constantly practicing. They're constantly, sort of adjusting and these sort of things, and getting great coaching. And that's basically like being a great athlete, right? So thank you for sort of, pointing that out. What would you say, Sai, was anything that stood out around your YC experience, right? YC is the premier organization of its kind on planet Earth. I don't know about Mars and Venus and so on. I think we'll get there at some point. We'll probably figure out that there's life there. But anyways, we probably already know it. But in any case, what was that experience like, and any sort of takeaways? And then Atul, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, Jorge. So YC is a beast. So, if if any of those founders out there, if you've gone through YC, you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. But, I think the most beautiful part about the program is that it pushes you to move fast, right? So we started YC in June last year, and by September we had paying customers, and pretty big contracts too at that. And by the end of basically September, we had completed raising our seed round. So, and by the way, keep in mind that when we started in June, we had 15 ideas, by the way. We had 15 ideas that we were still thinking through, deciding which one we wanted to go with. And so we went from having like all these different ideas to choosing an idea, building it, getting customers, and raising our seed round. So extremely fast process in just 3 months. And the reason for why, we were able to do that is just because YC kind of gives you the structure where every week you basically get together with other founders in the program, and you discuss your progress, right? It's kind of like a roundtable discussion, and you kind of motivate each other, teach each other tips and tricks on what's working. And so I think that really pushed us, like every week, just hearing other people's progress, hearing what other people were doing to, get their deals done faster. And we just kind of adapted from there.
Yeah. Atul, from a technical perspective, was there anything that really sort of stood out around the resources and just the general experience of being at YC?
I think that's the beautiful part of YC, is that they don't need to provide you any technical support, right? The types of people that get YC like tries to bring in is engineers that they teach sales and product strategy to. So in fact, like I met brilliant engineers through YC, and like it's such a great group. And we're all just going through this like wonderful process of learning like, the sales and product strategy tips and tricks together. And it's seriously just an unfair advantage, right? Because you learn bouncing ideas off each other in those group office hour sections like way faster than you would experimenting on your own. Like a lot of our friends who went through YC with us like to call it, the most productive 3 months of your life. And, it's not far from the...
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that one. The 3 months, but even now, even after being at this for the last 7-8 months, I can say that those 3 months were probably the most productive 3 months. And every few weeks, Atul and I try to get together and try to replicate that again, see if we can light that fire once again. But I think it's just a different type of fire when you're in the program versus you're out.
Yeah, no, I've been through 2 incubators myself, one called Angel Pad and another one called Alchemist. And as a founder, and it's definitely this beautiful experience. Definitely wasn't as big as YC, but even these smaller groups, like the camaraderie, the sort of almost like, I don't know, we've gone through the trenches together, right? I still speak to a lot of those founders even years ago, and the first time I did that initial incubator was the end of it was actually the end of 2010. In 2011 we started, and so it's been, gosh, what, 13 years now, and I still talk to a lot of those folks. So like, from that perspective, I totally get it. Atul, if you were to think about why right now from a technical perspective it's the time for AI, anything that really stands out. And just I asked this question because AI, or the concept of AI, is definitely something that's been around for a while, right? But it's the way that it's being delivered today, the resources that are available today, the APIs, right? Like the knowledge, and I also think the acceptance of AI right now and the hunger around it, I think, is a little different. So what would you say is kind of like the reason why right now is the time for AI?
I think there's a couple fundamental shifts that have happened with the AI landscape over the past couple of years that have really set the stage for this, right? So one is that, and this is the biggest one for sure as well, is really the widespread use of generative AI. So previous AI systems were one of two things typically. They were either regressors or classifiers. And what that means at a really high level is either, they tell you yes or no to a question, or they predict like a number, between like 0 and 1. Like, for example, predict the value of this house in 2 years. All right. So those are the two types of ML or AI systems that we had, before this past 2 years or so. And in the last 2 years, and notably in the last like 8 months, really, we've seen an explosion here, is the advent of these generative AI systems. And with generative AI, you're able to interact with them in a much more human way than those previous systems, right? So like previous chatbot systems were essentially a bunch of those classifiers strung together, asking themselves internally a bunch of yes or no questions, throwing answers back at you, versus this newer tech is a lot more similar to the same way that a human brain like registers, internalizes, and then outputs conversation. So yeah, really just a complete paradigm shift in the types of models that are available to developers now. So that's a big one. And another really, really big thing is the hardware. Like, this is really an unsung hero behind the scenes here. But being able to run these AI models like cheaply and effectively, and being able to train them on like huge volumes of data cheaply and effectively is only a recent thing. There are a lot of like great hardware engineers putting in the work, building these like machine learning inference processors that have really allowed for the explosion of generative AI. Because the concepts that would have allowed for generative AI existed a while ago, but they were literally just cost prohibitive to train and bring about, and now it's possible. So that's why this explosion is occurring.
That really sort of rings a bell, right? For a lot of the innovations in the world, the cost structure is now being a lot more flexible and available, right? I mean, think about big data in the past, right? Like, we've been talking about big data for the last decade or so, and I think what folks like your former employer, Facebook, right, Meta, like, their ability to build these NoSQL databases back in the day, right, like, and be able to like actually store these in a very efficient way is really amazing. If you had, and I know this is a big question, Atul, but if you had to kind of answer the question of like how AI is going to impact our future, a lot of folks who are asking that question, a lot of organizations asking that question, a lot of people in their personal lives asking the question, right? Anything that really stands out that you would say, hey, you know what, this is going to be the way that I really believe AI is going to impact our future?
That's a great question. I've been on a lot of sides of this issue as well, right? Like, is AI going to come for creative jobs first, or is it going to come for procedural jobs first? And I think the conclusion that I've come to, at least for the time being, and I feel like my prediction horizon is stuck at 5 years, at the moment. The conclusion that I've come to, at least for the time being, is that AI is going to replace beginner roles, right? So those entry level roles across the board, right? Whether it be like doing really, really basic like background research for sales, or doing like really low level software engineering, like simple front end changes, or whether it be doing like small changes to the design of like a PowerPoint slide, right? That's the stuff that that can be well scoped with minimal context. That's what AI is going to come for, and this is going to really change how we train people, right? Because now, if the entry level role is no longer the training opportunity and that's been automated away, right? How do you step someone into the role above that? And that's something that is going to be a very painful process across the board. Like, there's going to be a lot of like issues here. I think that the companies that tackle that training problem are really poised to do well, especially over the next 5 years, where AI is this co-pilot.
Interesting. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Sai, if you think about advice, right, around the early stage founder experience, and particularly building out an MVP and finding those initial customers, again, kudos to y'all. I mean, I think you mentioned that you've had paying customers since September. I mean, that's probably as fast as I've ever heard folks get customers from the beginning of the concept to then actually getting those customers. But also you had mentioned some pretty substantial deals. Any sort of advice that you would give those early stage founders, again, around building an MVP and then getting that to revenue?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, founders, especially technical founders, what tends to happen is, you get really excited about the product, you can build a million different features. And so as soon as you get the chance, you just start building, right? You just start building. You're coding all day, trying to build every possible feature that's in your head. That's a recipe for disaster. And we've learned that the hard way as well. I mean, we've been in that boat. And the reason I say that is because at the end of the day, you can build 50 features, but probably only 2 or 3 of those features are actually going to be valued by your users, right? So what you're better off doing is just build what your users want, right? Build those 3 core features, ship them to your users, and then have them tell you what comes next, right? And so it's a very hard thing to wrap your head around when you're a technical founder, because you're like, okay, it will just take me just 1 week. I can build this next feature. But you might build it and find out you just wasted a whole week because your customers don't really care what you just built, right? Care about what you just built, right? So I think that's a big one that I would say when you're building your MVP. It's about build the minimum viable product. There's a reason why it's called the minimum viable product. So ship those core features and then learn from your customers and build only what they want. That's the only way to build a great product at the end of the day and save a lot of time for yourself. Yeah.
And to share a little bit about our MVPs, right? Like, they were hilariously minimal. It is the thing that I want to get across, right? Like, with our previous product, which was an email personalization product, our MVP literally ran locally on my computer. People would send us an Excel spreadsheet with a list of email addresses that they wanted emails sent out to and the names of people. And then we would generate emails and send it back as an Excel file. Like, that's how hilariously minimal it was. There wasn't even a front end. And then with this latest product, our MVP, for the sales training product, it literally ran in a terminal window. Like, you could speak to the most robotic sounding voice ever. You'd wait 15 seconds for it to respond. But that was enough. People understood what went on here. And it was enough for people to commit to paying for it. And then we turned that into the polished-ish product that you see out there on our demo site.
It's hard. When Atul first built that MVP, right? It was literally 1 day worth of work, and I knew that this could be a million times better, and it took me a little bit to get over that hump in my own head and say like, hey, it's okay. Like it doesn't need to be perfect before we show it to a customer. So we just took that one day's worth of work and just put it in front of a bunch of customers. Yeah, we got some eyebrows here and there, but then as soon as they see it and they understand the concept, that's all we really needed. That's all the validation we needed. And then we asked them, hey, like, what would you add to this? Right. And then that's how we just continued building the rest of the product. And today it's just, uncomparable to what we had on day one.
And how did you get from those conversations where you're like, all right, I'm going to build that feature that you requested. I see that you get what we're trying to do here. From that to you're getting deals, right? And people are actually paying substantial amounts of money for the system. I know that there are, plenty of little building blocks there, but was there anything that really stands out to you around that leap?
So I think the thing that we did really well, especially with this product from day one, was just relationship building from day one, right? So the way we actually got this idea is we were at a conference. It was a marketing conference where we met a bunch of CMOs and marketing leaders. And, we told them about this idea we had. We had no product or anything. We just had kind of an idea. And their faces just lit up, right? They were so excited and they were like, do you have it like on you right now? Could I check it out at the conference, right? And we're like, we don't have it right now, but what about tomorrow? We can meet you at a coffee shop and we'll show it to you, right? And this is just us with like, just an idea, no product. So we went home the same day, stayed up all night building this thing, and then met with some of those people we talked to at the conference the next day at a coffee shop and just demoed it. And this was like the most basic version of it. And they were just so excited to see it, right? And so that was kind of like the initial conversation. It's like, okay, here, like we talked about at the conference. Now we've proven that we can build something in a day, right? And then like a week later, we improved that, showed them the updated version. Then a week later, we showed them the next update. A week later, we showed them the next update, until one day, they were so impressed by how fast we were moving and the fact that we were prioritizing what they wanted to see. And yeah, the next thing you know, they're interested in purchasing the product eventually. So I think it was just a lot of like weeks of just showing this customer our entire process, building openly, building what they want until they're happy with the product.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time. I just had one last question for you. Anything that really stands out around, let's say, the challenges, and then on the other side of the spectrum, highlights of being a founder that you didn't anticipate?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I would honestly say that the most interesting challenge, that we've been dealing with a lot lately, right, is just the severe lack. You need to be ruthless at prioritizing, and like that's something that you don't really think too much about before you enter into the space. In those like crunch times, when you're getting like hammered with like demo requests or getting hammered with like customer support requests, there's a million things that can be making your life like really compressed. You need to be like really, really making sure that you understand what's important in those scenarios, because it's really easy to get it wrong. You can either end up doing a lot of work and spinning in circles, or you could even do counterproductive work. So yeah, that I didn't think too much about it before we got into this, but now that we're here, it's something that's on the top of our mind almost daily.
Yeah, and I would say from my end, one thing that I tell, so I get a lot of founders, that come to me and ask me like the same question, and I think one of the biggest pieces of advice too that I would give is and then, by the way, I got this advice when I first started. I didn't really take it as seriously initially, but now it makes complete sense. The idea is, as a founder, you have to be shameless and you have to be willing to do anything to get in front of the people that you want to get in front of, right? Like oftentimes, nobody's priority is to talk to you, right? Your customers out there, they're doing a million other things, right? So part of the skill of being a founder is like, how do you actually get them to pay attention to you, get them to listen to you? When you send them that like cold LinkedIn message, why should they respond to you, right? When you send them a cold email, why should they respond to you? Even if you message them 10 times, why should they respond to you? They have no obligation to you, right? So that's demoralizing as a founder sometimes. It's like, damn, I've been doing this for 3 months trying to reach this VP of sales and it just crushes you, right? But I think the best founders are so resilient to that, and they'll do whatever it takes. Okay, if the cold LinkedIn message doesn't work, go send them an email. Go find someone that can intro you. So I think, yeah, basically you got to find any way to get in front of the people that you need to get in front of, because it's the only way to move your business forward. You can't just sit around and watch.
Awesome. Sai, Atul, thank you so much, co-founders. And I think just it feels like you're really onto something really, really big. So congratulations. Hyperbound.ai, very much appreciate your time. If folks wanted to maybe connect with you on social media or maybe get in contact to learn more about the product, we have a lot of go-to-market folks who watch the show. What are the best channels to reach you?
Oh, there's two good ones. LinkedIn is our preferred go-to. We're always on there, so it should be pretty easy to reach us there. But you could also email us directly at founders@hyperbound.ai, and I'll get back to you very soon.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Jorge. Appreciate it.